We would like to deliver now the understanding of what our next transmission is all about for your December month. The title of this will be The Silent Season. You have the idea of a silent night in your December month, but the idea is that as you transition from your year of 2025 into your year of 2026, through your December and January months, as you cross that threshold, this is what we will term the silent season. It is important for you in a centered, balanced, in an almost meditative state to be within yourself, to be within your sphere, to be within your bubble, which can still include others, but almost like going within, into a silent space to help you go through this transition into the year in which more and more awareness of our existence, of extraterrestrials, of disclosure will be coming about. So we will deliver a very specific collective permission slip that will help you go through this transitional period in the way that is representative of being in a silent season where everything is quiet, where everything is gathering, so that you may slide very easily into a new era, into a new reality, into a new year that will bring forth much acceleration and much change. So join us for the archetypal permission slip exercise meditation that we will deliver in the silent season.
Just happened, brother. I wanted to ask you, really to begin, this has to do with the excitement piece of your work. Mm-hmm. And it really is, in the terms of all the parallel realities that we have here on Earth, what would happen to a planet's grid if billions of people started acting on and living their highest excitement?
Well, it would all flow. It would all fit, because everyone acting on their highest excitement means they're all being exactly who they truly are. Because that's what passion and excitement are, is the vibration of your soul. So if everyone is being who they truly are, then it's like puzzle pieces forming a big picture. Everyone is the shape that they were created to be, and it fits with all the other shapes to create the whole picture, which can then support all the pieces. So everything would synchronistically, automatically work. It would all flow together, and it would all continue to expand.
I'm thinking of the game that we used to play as kids, Dominoes, and your recent event in Sedona, the annual weekend event you called it Dominoes. So I'm wondering, with so many pieces of the puzzle going on right now for humanity, what would take for us to tip that first domino and for all the other dominoes to start falling into place toward what Bashar would call the future of humanity?
Well, certainly it takes commitment to a particular vibrational frequency. It takes an expansion of consciousness. Now, one of the major events that's probably going to happen very quickly that can add to that momentum and really get the dominoes to start shifting and falling and changing would be the introduction of extraterrestrials to our society, which, as Bashar has explained, will probably happen within a couple of years at the most. So once that happens, humanity will be exposed to a lot more options and also a lot more understanding of what humanity is all about, what our place is in the universe, how we can move forward together in a more beneficial way, rather than focusing on all the division that is now being experienced and all the chaos that is being created by those divisions. So I definitely think that we are approaching a time in the very near future, when different things will be happening and different options will be available to us to start looking at ourselves and the universe in a very different way with some new understanding.
What's interesting is that the probabilities of what we have now until this full disclosure that you're talking about, 2027 has been a big year that's been repetitively talked about, not only through your channel, but also through other channels as well. And you say, and Bashar also has said this, that it's not simply a prediction. This is a way for us to manifest and focus on that higher probability. So I wanted to turn it over to you and say, like, how is this more than just something that we're predicting as a year and actually using our human consciousness to create this new reality?
Well, the idea from Bashar is that all different realities exist already. All parallel versions of Earth already exist. So by constantly talking about the idea of focusing on 2027 as the year of open contact and full disclosure, we're not only hearing that as a prediction of the most likely energy that we can navigate toward, but it actually adds to our desire to navigate in that direction. So it's both a prediction that, is saying, well, here's the highest probability in your future, but only if you align with this vibrational frequency. So constant exposure to the idea creates a momentum in that direction, because now so many more people start thinking of it as an option, as a reality that's probable for us. So the prediction, in a sense, can also make itself come true by being known about, by being talked about, by being desired, by focusing humanity's consciousness in the direction of that as a high probability, as opposed to just a remote possibility.
And if we could put it into words, when we talk about matching the vibration of where maybe these extraterrestrial societies are operating at, how would you put that into words in terms of the vibrational match that we should get to in order to start this and establish this first contact?
Well, again, it comes down to Bashar's formula of acting on your passion, because passion, our physical body's translation of the energy messages coming from our soul to guide us in life, translates as that sensation of passion, excitement, creativity, love. So it's that vibration itself that is the equivalent of how many advanced extraterrestrials operate. It is the true vibration of our soul self. It is the frequency that represents who we actually are as a being, because soul is what we are. We don't have souls, we are souls. And the idea is that the frequency that represents passion is our soul signature. It is our signature vibration. And therefore, by constantly acting on our passion, being in that vibration, being who we truly are as souls, that creates more and more equivalency with the extraterrestrials that operate on that high frequency level on a daily basis, because that's where they are in their evolutionary path.
Is it possible that when we're acting on our highest excitement and passion, that we might harm another person or a group of people?
No, it's not possible, because we're in a higher vibration, and that omits the idea of harm. Now, if harm is created, we are not operating on our highest frequency. We are not operating in our passion. Sometimes we may think we are, but we have to have the discernment and the ability to know the difference within ourselves between excitement and anxiety, because a lot of people can be in denial about what it is they're feeling, not willing to look at it, and they can think they're acting on their passion, but in fact, they're actually acting out of fear, acting out of anxiety, and thinking that, they're doing the right thing by themselves and others when they're not at all. So it comes back to that ancient phrase of know thyself. We have to really be transparent and honest within our self-investigation about whether we're truly expressing our passion or whether we're just falling under the idea of our fear, our anxiety, and just disguising it as passion because we don't want to look at ourselves and we don't want to take the time to investigate ourselves and figure out what's going on and what we're believing to be true. Because sometimes, we may believe things that are just too painful to look at. And therefore we just kind of try to cover it up and numb it and then move ahead thinking, that we're being our true selves. But then that just causes a whole bunch of chaos because we're not actually acting out of our passion. We're acting out of anxiety, which can cause all sorts of things and harm, in our society. So we have to be honest with what we're doing and why we're doing it and why we believe what we believe.
It's interesting how anxiety can mask itself as excitement.
Yeah.
I know that you've been in the process of writing a book all around exploring these different reactions that different groups and the public will have once this open contact is established. When we start maybe imagining what these reactions might be, what do you feel will be the general consensus, the general reactions that people can have once we are exposed to this new world of intergalactic species?
Well, I think over time, over a couple of decades, everyone will probably mostly start to gravitate toward understanding how beneficial it is to have extraterrestrial interactions and how much expansion it will allow humanity to experience. Right away, immediately after open contact, I'm sure there will be any number of reactions across the entire spectrum of positive to negative, because, it's going to bring a lot of people into confronting their own fears, confronting their belief systems, dealing with them, because now you have something in front of your face, like an extraterrestrial, that represents a whole other reality, a whole other system of beliefs. And we have to figure out how do we integrate this into our understanding and into our society. So I'm sure there will be people that will gravitate toward it with joy, and there will be people that will repel from it with fear and all sorts of actions and reactions in between. It'll just depend. But I think over time, when we get used to the idea that extraterrestrials are here and that they can really help humanity evolve, I think eventually everyone will probably, at least most everyone, will probably come on board with that, because they'll realize also that if they don't, based on the things that the extraterrestrials can teach us and give us and teach us how to do, not only sociologically, but technologically and medically and all sorts of things, I think if they don't kind of come on board, they'll feel like they're going to be left in the Stone Age. So I do think it'll be obvious within a couple of decades that pretty much we'll have a more cohesive human society and really start moving in the direction of peace and global unity, and then becoming members of a galactic society.
Bashar has also said that regarding this open contact, part of it is actually that it will be revealed that this has been going on for a while, that we've already been in contact with these species, but maybe in more covert ways. So what can you speak on to regarding that aspect?
Yeah, some extraterrestrials have been working behind the scenes. Hybrid extraterrestrials have been working and living among us, doing certain things to help guide us in the direction of peace and unity, and evolutionary path. And at open contact or shortly thereafter, all of that will be revealed, that they've been working with us for quite some time, working with certain scientists, certain officials, secretly behind the scenes to help move us forward. And I think then they will reveal to us what has been done, what has brought us to this point that they've been helping with. And that will probably also help us assimilate a little bit better into the understanding that, hey, they've been doing this all along anyway. This is just a continuation, but now the continuation can be done more in the open. And so now everyone can know how they've been helping us and how they can continue to help us as we move forward.
From my understanding, there are certain roles that certain galactic species take on when it comes to creating this contact with another galactic species. For example, Bashar, they are first contact specialists. And I'd love if we could maybe explore what that role really means. But you've also talked about another one that comes after, which is the social engineers.
Right.
And I'm also really curious to get to know about, because that's the second phase of open contact.
Well, yeah, and that's what goes with the idea of somebody coming in and starting to say, look, this is how you manage an entire planet. This is how you distribute things like food across the world without, leaving anyone without. This is how you unify a society. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. So social engineers, in a sense, are like planetary managers that can teach us how to run an entire planet, not just a country and not just a city or something like that. But this is how it works for an entire world, because this is how it works for a federation that's composed of many different planets, and how we all get along and how things work out for everyone. And here's a technology that can make that easier. And here's an understanding of how things work that can make it easier. So yeah, the planetary managers, the social engineers will come in after open contact, and we can learn a lot from them about how they run their own planets, and it would be more efficient to run Earth as well for the benefit of all humankind.
Would that require us to even start seeing the planet as something completely different, like an actual sentient being or something similar to that?
Yes, in a way. We have to understand that, in a sense, everything is alive, everything is made of consciousness, and that there is a collective consciousness to humanity, and there is a consciousness to the planet itself. And that we have to understand that we don't exist in nature. We are nature. We are an expression of nature along with the planet and everything on it. So it's about that symbiosis. It's about that belonging and that connection, and understanding that everything has a form and is an expression of a form of intelligence. So I think the ETs will be able to teach us how to relate to the universe in a much more organic way, in a way that is much more representative of what consciousness is all about. So yeah, I do believe that they will teach us that too. Extraterrestrials look a lot like us, enough like us that they can actually blend into our society and have been working in our society for many years. And we just consider them, to be human beings because we can't tell the difference. But they know who they are, and they've been working behind the scenes to do a lot of different things that will help move things forward, create peace, prosperity, so on and so forth. So it's because they look a lot like us that I think we'll be a little bit more accepting, and won't be so uncomfortable dealing with them, because we've already been dealing with them. They've already been among us. The Pleiadians are related in a way to us. They are closer to looking like humans, although they don't quite look that way, but they would look like exotic humans, something a little different, almost like another race of humanity, so to speak. And so again, the first introductions would be of the extraterrestrials that are more like us, to put us at ease, to let us know that we do have some things in common, we can relate to them. And then, of course, over time, they'll introduce us to species that are less and less and less like us, because the vast majority of aliens out in the cosmos look nothing like us at all. The ones that do have more similarity, in some ways, are probably remotely genetically connected to humanity, or maybe even more precisely to say, humanity is remotely genetically connected to them. So it's more like having your, cousins show up before they start introducing you to someone that is, from a completely different culture.
That's a good metaphor there. And I'm wondering what would be then that history behind the genetic connections that we have to these other races. Because I know that you've also said at the moment of open contact, there will be this sort of holographic storage unit of history of what they've been observing of humanity that will be gifted to us so that we can see our true history. I don't know if you've gotten maybe a glimpse of how those genetic connections started in the first place.
Yeah, well, the idea generally goes all the way back to a concept that we now understand called panspermia. There are certain kinds of genetic material that travel through space on either comets or meteors that get delivered to different planetary systems. And so that can happen over a wide area of the galaxy where certain genetic material sort of congregates in one particular area over many, many light years and many different planetary systems. So the genetic material that arrived here from wherever may have arrived on many other planets that had environments conducive to the growth of that genetic material, the evolution of that genetic material into something similar like us. And there might also have been deliberate seeding on certain planets like Earth of genetic material from different species that, again, we are like. So those two things, just general panspermia and deliberate conscious seeding of a planet with genetic material from different extraterrestrial races, those are two ways in which we could be very strongly genetically connected to other races that we are now encountering.
Hmm. And when it comes to genetics, you brought up the hybrids as well. And you said that, a lot of us may not be able to tell the difference between hybrid or human, normal human, I would say, but they know who they are. Yeah. And I'm wondering if, in a way, we can, because a lot of us have started to develop more discernment and more abilities to feel and sense really the frequency and the vibration of another person. When it comes to hybrids, and you talked a lot about that related to children, the children that are being born right now, how can we sort of feel into that new frequency that's emerging inside of our species and this planet?
Well, first of all, remember, when I'm talking about the hybrids that are among us, I'm talking about two different things. Humans are already hybridized. That happened a long time ago in terms of the introduction of extraterrestrial genetics into the early hominid species that evolved on Earth from panspermia or whatever. So that humans have already, Homo sapiens sapiens is already a hybrid species. So as we develop and as we evolve and expand our consciousness, then yes, there are more and more abilities that we have that are embedded in our genetic structure that are now waking up, dormant genes and so on and so forth. The hybrids I'm referring to that have been working among us are born off planet. They're not born here. They actually are delivered here. They're dropped here. They blend in with us. So that's who knows who they are, is what I'm talking about. They know they are hybrids from off the Earth. The people here that are waking up and recognizing their hybrid lineage and hybrid ability, in a sense, are evolving in a way that allows them to eventually become more compatible with the hybrids from other places, from off planet, who will come to live among us or who are living among us. They have talked about the introduction of hybrid children in our society, many of which have already been introduced into our society through adoption agencies, because no one knows where children come from. When they come from adoption agencies, they're left on their doorstep, so to speak. So a lot of hybrid children have already been introduced into our society by human families adopting them, even though they may not know that they're adopting an extraterrestrial hybrid. So that's what I'm talking about when I say that hybrids have been living and working among us. These are beings from off the planet. Humanity is developing more of its own abilities as well in this process of evolution, because we are already all hybridized. So the idea is that we're becoming more compatible with the same abilities that we're learning and growing into that a lot of hybrids have. And when open contact occurs, that's going to accelerate, because exposure to the idea of hybrids who will be able to interact with us more openly, and exposure to extraterrestrials that we will now be able to also interact with off and on, will heighten our ability to exhibit a lot of the same qualities that the extraterrestrials and hybrids have, like telepathy, psychic functioning, so on and so forth. So it's kind of like an upgrading of our vibration when we get to interact with these beings in an open forum rather than having them only be behind the scenes. Because right now, their priority is to not let us know who they are. And so they keep their distance. But when open contact occurs and we can find out who all of these beings are, then we'll be able to interact with them more openly, and that will start to rub off on us, vibrationally speaking.
Our world is shifting faster than ever, and it's so easy to feel small in the middle of all of this. Imagine being part of a movement, a tribe that is not just talking about the change, but actually living it. That's why I created The Deep Dive, a living spiritual ecosystem where every single day we go on a journey to remembering our most authentic self. Our members have joined from all walks of their awakening, and it's been such a blessing to witness all of the soul relationships that are already forming. As a community, we start every day with simple, powerful activities, and we're beginning to start envisioning the kind of world that we want to experience. This is way more than exclusive content or just another spiritual Netflix. This is about integration and leaving behind a legacy. If you're ready to move beyond knowing into becoming, then visit the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen right now to learn more. I'd be honored to co-create history with you. So are we saying that there could be someone watching this right now that knows they're a hybrid being, but hasn't been able to really tell people because of the fear of what might happen in the current reaction of our consciousness and where human consciousness is at right now?
Well, yes, I don't think they're doing it so much on a fear basis, but just it's not time yet. We're not ready yet. But it is happening very soon. So we are approaching that point. You know, one of the markers you're seeing that lets us know we are getting closer and closer to that moment are things like all of the congressional hearings that are now going on, talking about UFO disclosure and letting whistleblowers come forward and military people come forward with their UFO reports without being ostracized, without ruining their careers, now creating actual rules, regulations, guidelines, and laws that allow people to start really taking UFO sightings seriously so that nothing happens to them with regard to their careers or their reputations or anything like that. So we're seeing now a lot of progress being made in the disclosure arena that allow people to say it's okay now to recognize that UFOs are real. There are things going on that we now need to explore and discuss openly, not ridicule people for reporting them and all that. So that's a definite marker that we're evolving toward it being okay and recognizing that, yeah, this is going on. It's been going on for a long time. We're now willing to admit it, and we're now willing to start accepting it. And the next step would be to accept the beings that are actually arriving in these ships. So that's why it's happening sooner than later.
Political landscape per se?
Well, I mean, it's a good thing that people are recognizing that this is a real thing to be aware of and that it's going to be changing our society drastically. So I think that, you know, the politics has to conform to the understanding that we have to start having diplomatic relations with beings from other worlds. And it's got to become something that becomes part of our society and part of our awareness, part of our daily lives. So, of course, it will include everything, you know, because when you talk about planetary management, you're talking about every phase of our society. You're talking about technology, you're talking about sociology, you're talking about finance, you're talking about politics, you're talking about everything. They're going to be involved in every aspect of our society. So, you know, all those things have to adjust themselves to a greater reality in some way, shape, or form. And that's just part of our evolutionary path.
We've talked about children, and I'm curious to know, you know, in relation to the education space and the education sphere of things, how do you feel that might change when all of a sudden the history books that we've had for decades and ages are outdated or false in many degrees?
Well, yeah, we'll have to change them. We will have to, you know, explore and investigate and understand I'm not saying, it's like the aliens go here and then we just accept everything, at face value. But we will have to be taught, this is why, this is the way this is what happened here. Do your own validations, do your own research, but here's the evidence. They can provide the evidence that demonstrates that certain things on our planet have happened. They can provide the holographic records of things. And, I'm sure there will always be some skepticism, and that's fine, about, are these real or are they manufacturing them? Because now, even on Earth, we have AI images and we don't even know what's real anymore. So I'm sure there will be a lot of people at first that will go, well, are they really telling us what our real history is? Or do they just want us to believe that this was what our real history is? And that's fine. But I think eventually they'll be able to demonstrate enough actual evidence that we'll start to understand, yeah, this is exactly where we came from, who we are, kind of where we're going, and this is what it's all based on. So eventually I think we will probably have to integrate all that information into our understanding of history, and all the history books will have to change.
It human, I'm like, what is this? So how would you recommend when it comes to discernment around AI and how we should manage what is truth within ourselves?
First of all, you always go with the understanding. You do more research than that. You don't rely on one source for your information. That's number one. You look at multiple sources, multiple avenues of information behind the scenes, explore what different people are saying in different ways. By doing that, you ultimately can come to a conclusion that, in general, this is just a generalization, anything that is causing or inducing a fear-based reaction is probably not as true as the ones that are promoting some kind of a understanding, connective, positive background or idea of what it is that can be happening. I'm not saying you become a Pollyanna and accept every positive thing as true. I'm just saying that a lot of manipulation is more easily done when you appeal to people's sense of fear. And therefore, if it's something that makes you feel a little bit out of control, that's probably more of a manipulation than it is a representation of a reality. Because the reality is usually much more middle of the road and much more balanced than that. I'm not saying there aren't negative things. Of course there are, and there are positive things. But it is the idea of accessing as much data as possible. And this is where AI is ultimately going to be beneficial for bringing out what's really true, because AI can be used to actually vet and validate or invalidate a lot of the things that AI is being used to create. Because when you have AI that's capable of absorbing so much data, it's the absorption of all that data and the AI's assessment of what in all of that data is most likely true, that will then allow us to start having a tool in AI that can actually be used for discerning what AI is producing as to whether it's more likely true or false. Because when you create an AI tool that is specifically for the purpose of determining what is true and what is not, out of all the data that exists, the preponderance of data will most likely let that AI tool, be able to tell you it's probably, maybe 1% of a probability that this thing is true, but 99% of a probability that this thing over here is true. And that way we'll start being able to have a tool that actually can pick out the truth from the false representations that even AI is being used to create. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
100%. Yeah. Even I know my sister's teachers in college are already implementing this to know what was an AI generated essay and which one wasn't, so they can fail the students that cheated.
Exactly.
One thing I wanted to ask you is, Bashar's civilization is an AI augmented species, meaning that AI has fully integrated with their species, what would that look like for us if we choose that direction?
Well, we are choosing that direction. And as other psychic mediums have also predicted, AI is going to be as ubiquitous in our society eventually as air and water. It will just be part of who we are. I don't think we have to be afraid if we understand how to use it ethically and how to balance out the idea that it's not so much that it is taking over our thinking for us, but that with the ubiquitous use of AI, it becomes our way of thinking. It allows us to think in a different way. It allows humanity to evolve in a different way with the merging of the technology coming into our reality. So, it's about how you approach it. It's like anything. Anything can be used positively or negatively. And it's about how you approach it. If you approach it ethically, if you approach it with balance, then, you can create things that will help humanity figure out stuff and move humanity forward. If you're just going to do it slapdash and not really think about the consequences of what you're doing, then yeah, it can cause all sorts of more chaos and misunderstandings and not knowing what's really going on. So, again, it's up to humanity to decide how to pursue this as a tool that can aid and assist us, or, not be responsible for how people are actually creating this thing and how it will actually affect society. So it's really up to us to determine the course of AI and how it can be beneficial, as opposed to how it can be manipulated.
Guide us in a better direction.
Well, isn't that what Bashar is doing? And beings like him are doing. They're
Right.
trying to give us the information that has worked for them. And again, you have open contact about to occur in a couple of years and literal exposure to ETs that have evolved over millions of years, giving us the benefit of their experience and guiding us to let us know, like, no, that doesn't work. And here's why. But this works. And here's why. So again, that's planetary management. That's sociological engineering. This is why this works. We have done this for millions of years. This is what's beneficial for everyone. You can take it or leave it, but we're telling you how it works and why it works. So if you can understand how to apply it, you'll see the benefits of doing this. You don't have to take our word for it. Just like Bashar says, look, it's not about whether I'm real. It's not about whether you believe me. It's about taking the information I'm sharing with you, applying it in your life, and actually seeing that it works. You can prove to yourself that the information actually causes a positive effect in your life. So don't rely on just the idea that I'm telling you this. Use it, take it, and validate it for yourself by using it and seeing the result. And so when people come back to me and say, I finally got what Bashar was saying, I finally applied it as precisely as he was talking about, and everything in my life changed for the better, well, there you are. There's the proof that the information is what's valuable and what's valid. So the same thing will happen when we have extraterrestrial open contact. Here's a way that other planets have been thriving for literally millions of years. If you would like to also thrive, here's the instruction manual. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Just follow it.
When it comes to Bashar's information and teachings that come through, what do you feel is a piece that hasn't fully landed for most people because we weren't ready in the past, but now we're almost ready to understand it in a new way?
Well, this is kind of one of the reasons why I'm ultimately now starting to teach a class as myself that explores Bashar's information with greater depth. Because, in a 90-minute event that Bashar does, he can touch on a lot of subjects like the formula, but, and people can get a general understanding of what it's about. But the class, which is basically consolidating all of Bashar's information into a metaphysical framework that explains all metaphysical phenomenology, can give people over the course of hours and days an opportunity to see through illustration and exploration an example of how all of his principles actually function, so that at the end of that class, ideally by being able to explore it with that degree of depth, it'll click. They'll get it. It's like, I get it now. I get why that works. I see how it works. I know how to put it into practice on a very pragmatic and practical level. So I'm excited about doing that, because that, I think, is what most people need. Is they just need to spend time more deeply with the information and actually see examples and hear examples of how it has worked for people, and get models and experiments and angles and things like that and different perspectives of it, so that it finally sinks in and it finally clicks, and it's something that they feel confident that they can use, that becomes like, second nature. And therefore, I think that's what it takes. It's just spending more time with it more deeply and really understanding what he's saying about the difference between one definition and another definition, and how that can make all the difference in how you experience your reality.
What I'm getting there is that maybe in the beginning years of Bashar, people were more focused on the uniqueness of the phenomenon and the channeling. And, that this isn't something in our normal life that we see. And now it's almost like, okay, guys, this is normal.
Right.
There are more channelers out there. Now let's go into the teachings. Now let's go into the information.
Exactly. Yeah.
And when it comes to that, yeah, go ahead.
One of those teachings is that everyone channels from time to time, because when you do what you love to do, when you're in that zone or a deep meditation, you actually do go into a channeling state, which is gamma in the brain between 40 and 100 cycles or higher per second of brainwave activity. That's the channeling state. What you do with that is up to you, and you can do different things with it, more creative acts and so on and so forth. Doesn't have to be that you connect to another entity. It can be your own, bringing more of yourself through. But everyone can channel. That's the whole thing about demystifying what channeling is all about. And it's that kind of knowledge that can allow people to understand that it's a very practical, common, altered state of consciousness that we can use to our benefit and our advantage. So that's part of the whole process, is getting people to demystify what the idea of channeling is all about and understand it's a normal
experience in this lifetime. For example, if I signed up to experience betrayal and forgiveness and trust and all these other things, when I've had enough of those experiences, can I renegotiate with my higher mind to experience a different set of lessons and teachings from my higher self?
No. Because remember, your higher mind is your soul. It's you. It's you. You have made an agreement to experience these challenges. What changes is transforming those challenges. So you are having a different life experience by taking those challenges on, learning the lessons that you wanted to learn from them, applying those lessons in your life, and then changing the way you experience your life path. But you can't change the life path. That's what you set up until you're done, until you leave. So yes, you can change the quality of how you experience the life path, but you don't actually change the life path. You're just approaching it differently because of the lessons you have learned, which creates a different experience, which can make it seem like you have left those themes behind, but you haven't. You have just learned to master those themes and apply them in your life in a different way. You're still living those themes. You are just approaching them differently.
It is the desire of our higher self for us, as experiencing the dense reality, to become masters ultimately of this reality?
Yes, because that's why we chose to incarnate here. Earth is a challenging school. It's like going to college as opposed to high school. We're taking advanced courses. We are learning how to transform darkness to light, limitation to freedom, negative to positive, in a much deeper way. This is what Bashar basically refers to as the rubber band analogy. When you pull a rubber band back farther and farther and farther, when you finally let it go because it's built up so much energy, it snaps that much farther and faster in the other direction. So basically, a soul is using the depth of limitation, the depth of negativity, the depth of the darkness in a planet like Earth and its experiences to pull back into that negativity so deeply that when you finally get it and you finally let it go, you snap that much faster and farther into the light. So we're using the darkness as a way to propel ourselves farther and faster into the light if we learn the lessons that come with the challenges, that come with the limitations. So, but it's a college course. It's a university course. It's a master's degree course, not kindergarten, not high school, a master's course. So everyone that incarnates on Earth is taking advantage of a school that is very advanced and requires a lot of awareness and strength to transform the lessons that this course offers you. So this is that course. This is the Earth course. It's a very challenging course, but we're up to the task. That's why we're here.
And even though in general there are advanced courses and teachings, there's still a sort of a spectrum to it. And some people may have had a much rougher, harder, denser experience, maybe with suffering involved, trauma involved. What is the explanation to why some people choose such an end of the spectrum rather than others? Again,
The deeper you go into it, in a sense, the faster you can evolve if you get the point of the lessons that are there for you. So not only, however, is it done for the purpose of that soul that has chosen that experience, it's also done in service to others. So let's, for example, say a soul chooses to experience what we would consider to be a debilitating disease in this life. The soul can learn lessons for itself through that experience, but the soul can also be acting as a way for others to learn lessons through their experience as well. On a very simplistic level, let's say someone has a particular disease. Well, now all of the healing practitioners and doctors on the planet dealing with that person can learn how to overcome and cure that disease. Therefore, that soul has helped humanity evolve in its knowledge about what disease is, how to transform it into health. So many souls will choose to do that, and they are very advanced souls a lot of times who choose to do that because they're willing to put themselves through that temporary experience, as limiting as it may seem, for the purpose of allowing other souls to learn the lessons they need to learn that can evolve humanity further. So it depends on the soul, the reason for it, but it usually is something that can always provide a beneficial outcome if we learn the lessons that are connected to that experience.
It's such a selfless act as well, a soul that might choose that lifetime.
Well, remember, when you're a soul, you come from unconditional love. Unconditional. You understand that this is a temporary experience, and you understand that if something like this as a temporary experience can serve humanity in such a powerful way, a soul will not necessarily hesitate to have that experience because it knows that it's going to make an incredible impact in a positive way for humanity to do so. Mm-hmm. If nothing else, sometimes we see things happen over and over again that we don't prefer because souls may keep choosing to go through that experience so that humanity ultimately might finally say, enough. We will change our society to make sure that the perpetration of these heinous acts never happen again. So sometimes just by accumulation can souls choose to go through different victimization experiences so that humanity can finally open its eyes and say, okay, what do we need to do to address the cause of these behaviors, not just the symptoms? How can we make sure that humanity never experiences this anymore in its future? And that a soul might be willing to do to finally get humanity to be sick and tired of something that we don't prefer.
A lot of these causes stem from a systemic cause as well. When it comes to maybe abuse of children, when it comes to trafficking, that's a systemic issue. And maybe one person alone can't say, I don't want humanity to shift this. So when it comes to a systemic cause, from a soul higher mind perspective, what can we do there?
Well, again, it's the same answer. Because again, when you see that over and over and over again, when abuse is in your face over and over and you're forced to look at it and forced to face it, and you finally say, I've had enough of this. What do we need to do to stop this from actually happening? And look at the underlying causes of why that happens. Because it takes a victim to make a victim. An abuser is someone who has also been abused. And they're just carrying that chain forward. So you have to go back and stop treating the symptoms and start saying, why does this start to begin with? What's going on in the upbringing of a child that causes them to feel so worthless, so ineffective, so lost, so alone, so disconnected that they have to lash out in their society in a negative way to feel like they're getting some sense of control? How can we address that cause and stop that cause from happening in our society? What do we have to start teaching people? What do we have to start validating in people? What do we have to start doing for people in serving them so they grow up into adults who have absolutely no reason to ever abuse anyone, including themselves, in order to get what they need in life? We have to look at these situations that way and start actually doing something about it. And that's why souls will say, you haven't learned the lesson yet? Okay, I'm going to come back in this situation and I'm going to throw this in your face again and again and again and again on massive scales if necessary, until you finally get so sick and tired of being sick and tired that you will finally do something about it. Because there is, in physical reality and in humanity, an inertia that you have to overcome. So sometimes it takes a lot of something in order to finally say, you know what, we've had our fill. Let's do something about it. And if that's what it takes, then that's what souls will do.
It's not so different than the principle of individual transformation. When one person is sick and tired of being sick and tired, they make an intention and a decision that far outweighs the life that they're already living. And it's such a powerful intention that they actually do end up changing. So this is very similar for the collective.
Exactly. The collective has to make the same decision for the collective too. It happens on an individual level, but it has to happen on a collective level as well. And when it does, things change. You know, when the collective program decides to do something about something, we get it done. And it happens pretty rapidly. I mean, this is not exactly the same example. It's not the same subject, but look what happened when we decided just to go to the moon.
I was thinking of that example.
We went from nothing to being on the moon in less than a decade. Nothing. We had no space program, and then we were on the moon less than 10 years later when we decided to go ahead and do that, because it became a national decision. So when it's a large group's collective decision and everyone is behind it, it's unstoppable. But you have to understand that these things can be dealt with. I think part of the issue for a lot of people is they don't understand how these things happen, and therefore they can't get a handle on how to deal with it, because it has to do with consciousness and emotion and the things that make us feel what we feel, and belief systems and all this kind of stuff. And this is one of the values that Bashar brings to us, is he's talking about, look, this is how you're creating your reality experience. It's about what you believe to be true about yourselves. It's about how you hold on to these beliefs. It's about why you buy into them. You have to get in touch with the reason that you believe what you believe, because a lot of your beliefs are self-destructive. And you have to start from the very core beliefs of knowing that you're not unworthy, that you're not undeserving, that you're not incapable. You have to start believing in yourselves, and you have to start acting like you believe in yourselves, and know that you are worthy, deserving, and capable of doing anything that you put your mind to. But when you have a society that is feeling disconnected, is feeling out of touch, is feeling out of control, then it goes into denial about what it needs to do, because it just doesn't have a handle on it, and it is afraid to face these things because it just doesn't know what to do. It feels like it's at a loss. So it's about educating people to the depths of their consciousness, how we are connected to everything, how we are souls and powerful spirits, and let people start acting as if that is true, because that will change everything.
I feel like this also touches on the evolution of the energy of competition, because if I paid attention in history class, you brought up the example of the moon landing. And part of that was because the US accelerated to get there because the Soviet Union was trying to put a flag on the moon as well. So that in different to competition, it was actually a group of different communities or people were challenging each other to be better. And exactly. I feel like that's very similar when it comes to the systemic changes and the structural changes that humanity will need to go through.
Yes, and that's the way to look at it. Not so much the idea of the competition or the fear that they're going to get something before we are. It's the idea of, I'm going to do something that's going to raise the level of ability and challenge you to challenge yourself to do better than I'm doing. That's how Bashar's people view the idea of quote unquote competition, is you're in competition with yourself to improve. And when you improve, you inspire other people to improve as well. Not because out of fear, but just out of the inspiration and excitement of, oh, look what they're capable of doing. We need to find out if we can be capable of doing that too, and maybe even more. It's more of an inspirational challenge than it is the idea of competing out of fear because you're afraid you're going to lose.
Larry Bird and Magic Johnson were rivals, but essentially they had something more in common than they had with anyone else, which was they were trying to be the best in their craft.
Exactly.
And do you see something similar going on right now? Because there's been so much division around the US and China. Do you feel like in a way they're working together to actually make a better society?
Whether they know
that's a far out statement.
Whether they know it or not, ultimately, yes. If you approach it that way, yes. So in other words, again, also even the things that are creating chaos can be used to our advantage, because we're being shown all the ways that things don't work. And that can actually make it clearer as to what does work. So you can even take advantage of the things that you believe are negative and chaotic by using it as a lesson for what it is that will work in the opposite direction. But you have to be able to do that and not focus on the idea of the negativity in a negative way. You have to use the negativity to a positive effect. It's like even seeing what doesn't work can clearly show you more easily what does, by contrast. So you just have to be of the mindset and the energy to see it that way and use it that way. And then, yes, it can propel everyone up.
It's like the role of an ex in relationships. You know, you had your ex, you saw what you didn't like, and then now you're with your future partner, your next partner.
Exactly, because all the things you learned in that relationship prepared you for the potential of the next relationship, which may actually be better for you. And that means you have to thank your ex for the things that you learned in that experience that made you a person that could attract someone more vibrationally compatible for you.
Why do you feel that someone out there might be saying, yes, I can see that, but why are things seeming to move so slow? in terms of the
Because
societal and structural changes?
Because, as I said, there's an inertia, there's a momentum to these things that you have to overcome. And this is a physical reality of space and time. There are things like time lags. You have to be consistent. You have to be constant. You have to have the drive to keep going and allow yourself to take advantage of the fact that you do have to, because of, the resistance that people have. It's the resistance that people have to change because they're afraid of change. They're afraid of the unknown. You have to make them understand that change is always happening anyway, every moment, and it's nothing to be afraid of. Change is only going to allow you to discover more of who you are. So it's the definitions we have of these kinds of things that slows us down, forces us to procrastinate because we're afraid to move forward. Once you remove the fear of moving forward from society, society will move forward. But as long as we keep making reasons to be afraid to move forward, we will put on the brakes and things will take a longer time. We can accelerate them, but you have to remove the fear of moving forward from people because they think something worse is going to happen. They'll feel out of control. They'll feel unprepared. So again, Bashar's information is this is how you get prepared. This is how you redefine your reality so that you understand that there is nothing to be afraid of about what's going to happen. Because if you understand that you can get an advantage and a benefit out of anything that happens, then you won't care what happens because you always will be able to use it to your advantage, no matter how it was created. So once you allow people to understand that, they will be eager to move forward.
What are the metaphysics of a time lag in this reality?
Well, we're creating time and space by the shifting of our consciousness through various parallel probabilities. So again, it's the belief system structure that determines the rate and the pace of that timing, and also whatever lessons have to be learned that may require a certain amount of physical time and space in order to learn those lessons we want to learn. Because again, physical reality does come with the experience of space and time to a certain degree. We can accelerate it, but we can't accelerate it beyond the process that might be necessary for us to learn the lesson. So we can shorten the amount of time, but only so far as it doesn't eliminate a process that we set up on our life path in order for us to be able to actually learn a lesson that we need to learn. But we can accelerate it down to that. And that
we can't bypass
it, but we can accelerate. If we're willing to learn the lessons, then we can learn them more quickly. If we're not afraid of receiving challenges and we approach a challenge in a more positive way to learn a lesson from it, then we can learn those lessons more quickly. Our free will, as some particular psychic mediums say, our free will as physical beings can alter the speed, the scale, and the scope of our life path. So the speed at which we experience our lessons, the scope and scale of how many people do we impact, how many expressions of our passion do we get to express. We can affect those things with our free will as a physical being. But the free will of the soul has chosen this life path. So it's laid out the lessons, it's laid out the challenges. It's up to the physical mind to go, okay, I'm going to experience these challenges more slowly or more quickly. I'm going to experience a larger scale of facing these things or a smaller scale. And I'm going to impact a few people or a lot of people by doing this, but I'm going to go through those challenges.
There are some people that view this Earth experience as a school, like we've been mentioning. There are others that view it as something that we need to exit and leave because it's a trap, essentially. And I wanted to hear your thoughts. Your thoughts on that.
Not a trap. It's not a trap. That is one of those definitions that makes it more challenging and more difficult for people to understand how to experience their reality in a more positive way. They have to let go of those ideas, because anytime you define something that way, you are giving up your power. You are saying, I have no ability to change this. It's a trap. It's a pattern. It's a habit. I can't help it. I can't help it. So you're taking no responsibility for what you're experiencing. You want to be in the driver's seat. You want to understand. It's not about blame. It's responsibility, the ability to respond to what it is you're experiencing. You can't think of it in a negative way. Otherwise, you only experience it in a negative way. If you think of this reality as a trap, you're going to experience it that way. And it's going to be far more challenging for you to transform things in a positive way because you're fighting an uphill battle by your own definition. So you have to use definitions that actually work for you because creation doesn't care what definition you use. Remember,
who created the words?
It's unconditional. So if you say, I'm going to believe that Earth is a trap and that it's very difficult to get things done, creation is going to say, okay, I will support you in that belief unconditionally and reinforce it for you. But if you say, I understand this is a school, and I understand that I came here of my own free will and choice as a soul, and that I am learning lessons that will help me expand and grow, and this is fun. Creation's going to say, I unconditionally support you in that as well. It doesn't take sides. It doesn't choose the mindset for you. It takes its cue from what you believe is true, and so everything hinges on your definitions and your beliefs as to how you experience this physical reality. Because remember, physical reality is not a real place unto itself. It is something that's happening in your soul, in your consciousness. It's a projection of your consciousness. In essence, it's your soul having a daydream. All you have to do is wake up in that daydream and become lucid and realize you're the one that's dreaming it. So dream the dream you would prefer. I don't mean go into fantasy land. I mean understand how things work here and use them to your advantage in a pragmatic, practical way. It can be done. I'm living proof of that. Because I have, even before I knew anything about Bashar, always, out of high school, almost immediately, only chose to do things and work at jobs that were exciting to me, that were representative of my passion. I have been doing that now for well over half a century. It has always supported me. Always. It never hasn't. So I'm a living example that you can follow your dreams too, live your passion. You will always be supported because you're saying this is who you are. This is what's true for you. And the unconditional love of creation will say, okay, you've told me how to support you.
How does God or the universe or source view us when we're having fun in this game?
You have to understand that every single thing, positive, neutral, and negative, is all part of source. It's experiencing all of it. The idea is that, as you say, when we're having fun, when we're in a positive flow as opposed to a negative flow, we are going more with the flow of creation than swimming upstream. So it will probably feel more natural in a sense. Just using that word, a little easier, more effortless, because and again, these are just arbitrary numbers, but to illustrate the point with an analogy, creation is 51% positive and 49% negative, because the neutral position in the center is still a positive place because it allows you the freedom to choose. Whereas negativity makes it seem as if you don't have a choice. But positive reality and neutral reality gives you the freedom to choose. And therefore, that's a slightly more positive direction. So if you just relax into the flow of creation, you will just naturally start to drift into the positive current because that's the way it flows. So the idea that we're aligning with that side of it probably to source feels more like you're going with the majority of the energy that exists in creation rather than swimming upstream against the current.
What's the difference between being neutral and not wanting to take action or ownership over our life?
Well, not wanting to take action or ownership is a negative. It's not a neutral. So you are responsible for your life experience. You are. So denying that is a negative idea because it's a denial of the fact that you are responsible. And again, that's only because we're defining responsibility as blame, as something negative. As I said, responsibility is simply literally the ability to respond to your situation in a way that works for you. So take responsibility because that's the same thing as self-empowerment. It gives you the ability to respond to something in the way that you prefer to, so you can get a benefit and a lesson from it that will help you grow and expand and move forward. Not willing to do that only means you're afraid that something bad's going to happen if you do, and that means you don't have an understanding of how things actually work. So with that understanding of how things actually work, you will understand that it's not an automatic fact that something bad will happen if you move forward in the direction of your truth. That's just a story that the negative belief is telling you, so you won't let it go, because that's how beliefs perpetuate themselves, by telling you things that make it seem impossible for you to let them go. Now, we don't care when a positive belief tells us something because it uses positive techniques. But a negative belief, by definition, has to use negative techniques, like making you afraid to let it go or hiding from you so you won't even know it's there. So you have to understand that's just a mechanism of how beliefs perpetuate themselves, because if beliefs don't perpetuate themselves, you don't have any experience of physical reality, because physical reality isn't real. It's only the product of what you believe is true. And that's how it seems solid. So you have to understand and see through the idea of how these things work, understand the mechanism of how beliefs perpetuate themselves, and realize that if you're afraid to move forward because you think something's bad's going to happen, then you have to understand that's just a story that the negative belief is telling you. It's not a fact. And you can decide what's true for yourself and move forward and see that whatever you believe is true is what will happen for you, basically. It may happen in a different way, but it will still support you.
Bashar has said that their civilization operates on synchronicity. And it's almost like what I'm seeing is there's a relation between being in a positive flow with the amount of synchronicities that we start seeing unfold in our life. What does being in synchronicity look like in terms of the reality that we get to experience, rather than when we're against the flow of nature?
Well, remember that there's positive and negative synchronicity, in the sense that the things that you focus on negatively will also be reinforced, and you'll spiral down into that particular reality. But positive synchronicity basically is bringing you the things you need exactly when you need them, almost magically so. I have a perfect example of that in my life on several occasions, but one of the ones that really stood out very abruptly was when we were making a movie and we were looking for a narrator, and we wanted someone that had some kind of a reputation, so it would help promote the movie. And we had somebody in mind. Now, that person didn't wind up doing it, but that's not the point. We had somebody in mind that we wanted, and we sent a letter to that person's agent, and then, said, okay, we'll wait for their response to see if they're interested. The very next day after we sent that letter, we were having lunch with a friend, and the friend suggested a restaurant to go to that we had never been to before and don't normally go to. And so we said, okay, we'll join you there. I walk in the door, and who's walking out? The actor that we were asking to narrate our movie, right there. So it's like, wow. Okay, I had an immediate chance to talk to this person, to let them know we had just contacted their agent, and so on and so forth. So that's an example of what I'm talking about. Again, it didn't matter that that wasn't the person that wound up being the narrator. We synchronistically found someone that would. But the idea is that when you just follow and act on your passions to the best you can, it opens up a whole reality to show you how everything is connected, and what you need to know comes to you much more quickly and much more obviously. and gives you the information you need to move forward, almost magically. So it's that confluence of events that comes together to show you how everything is connected and works for you to your advantage when you allow it to.
I know you've said that you've ran into 10-year-olds who understand exactly what Bashar is talking about, is teaching about. What does that tell you about maybe your hope for the future generations that are coming in and your legacy as well as a channel?
Absolutely. I know that they know exactly what's going on. And as Bashar has said, this is not just a different generation. This is a different species. They're altered in ways that are very different, and they retain more connection to their spirit self. So they know things, and they're being allowed to know more things, and they're being allowed to remember their connections, and they're being allowed to use their psychic abilities and telepathic abilities and things like that more and more and more. So they will just be more vibrationally compatible with the extraterrestrials after open contact. They will grow up in a world where everyone just automatically knows we're not alone. That's very different from the world that I was born into, where people didn't even think about those kinds of things. But you have to realize that ever since the 60s, children have been born into a world when we've always been in space in one way or another. That's normal to their mindset, that you could be in space. And with each generation since then, with more movies and TV and books talking about interacting with aliens and spirits and all this, even though those are just stories, it makes a difference of how people look at the world and how they think certain things could be possible. And that makes all the difference in the world. When I was born, the idea that you could communicate with spirits and interact with extraterrestrials was not really a thing in the collective mindset. But it's definitely in the collective mindset now that it could be possible. And therefore, that can make all the difference in the ability of humanity to attract and manifest that probable reality into being. Makes a big difference.
Powerful. Darryl, we end every show with a segment called The Final Trio, which are some questions that I like to ask at the end. Before getting into that, though, I did want to maybe put our mind into the future. Let's say you and I are having a conversation around this time of year next year, 2026. Where do you feel humanity has evolved? What do you think we have overcome by that time? And where will we be headed around that time?
Again, this is a process. It takes time to change. I think there will be more and more people by that time who will know UFOs are real. It's something to look at. I do understand that more people will probably be understanding that open contact is imminent. I think more people will be practicing and exploring spirituality and consciousness, including science. And so I do see it as a progression. And I think we will see more evidence of these things in a year, and even more so after that, and it will accelerate.
Mm-hmm. And before heading into the final trio, I'd love to give a space for you to share where people can find you. I have on my bucket list to go to one of your escape room experiences and adventures the next time I'm in LA. But where would you send people to connect with you and your work and everything that you're doing? Yeah,
thank you. If they want to know anything about what Bashar has said or what's coming up in any Bashar events, they can go to bashar.org, BASHAR.org. If they want to know what we're doing with the escape room, they can go to boggledescaperooms.com, BOGGLED, boggledescaperooms.com. If they just want to know anything about any other books I'm writing or things like that, they can go to darryllanka.com, DARRYLANKA.com.
And do you have a timeline for that book that you said you were in the process of writing about the reactions of full disclosure?
Well, next year.
Next year.
Next year, hopefully it will be published sometime in 2026. Yeah.
Looking forward to it. The final trio, these 3 questions are personalized to each guest. So to you, the first one was really about the bigger picture of our connection with Bashar's species, the Essassani race. What has Bashar's species remembered about themselves through the reflection that they've had of humanity and of us? What have they remembered?
Well, that might be a question you would actually have to ask Bashar, but they have certainly remembered where they have come from, because we are genetically connected to them, literally, as family. So we give them an opportunity to kind of look back on themselves and their beginnings and how they have learned to transform their challenges in a way that gives them the ability to help us transform our challenges in the same way. So I think we're allowing them to experience having come sort of full circle in their evolution from where they started to where they are now.
We're helping them as much as they're helping us. Maybe.
Oh, always. They learn a lot from us. And it helps them also, especially Bashar as a first contact specialist, in dealing with what we go through. It helps them in communicating with other civilizations that may be experiencing their own challenges too. So they're learning from different planets, and different planets are learning from us. Yeah.
Bashar calls Earth the planet of stories. From your perspective, what story are we telling to our future selves?
That we can really transform anything that we put our minds to, that it doesn't matter what the challenge is, we are capable of rising to the occasion. We have the ability to do that because we are eternal, infinite souls, ultimately.
And finally, Darryl, what has been one question that has still been left unanswered by you or the people that you've worked with in your events to Bashar that is still unanswered? Is there a question that you still feel that you would like to go even deeper into, but haven't fully received a clear response or answer about whatever was on your mind?
See, that's interesting, because I don't think we're at a point yet in my relationship with Bashar where I would know about any question that they're not ready to answer. The questions only come up in some ways when they're ready to talk about them. And so it's kind of like saying there's still a lot more that we don't know, but we also don't know what we don't know. And when it's time to talk about it, then it will be presented to us what we haven't known that is now time to know about. So I just trust the way it kind of unfolds in terms of what they present us with is exactly when we need to know about that thing. And until that time, we don't even know what the questions are that we're missing.
I believe that questions are in the field, in the quantum field, whatever you want to call that space in between. And no question, it really doesn't have an answer. The question only opens the mind and the imagination for us to understand even deeper about this world, this reality.
Well, right. But as we move into, and as we evolve and move into different understandings and areas of consciousness, then sometimes the questions come up, because before you're actually in a certain area, you don't even know what questions belong in that area, what to ask. Mm-hmm. But when you arrive there, the questions reveal themselves, and then the answers come.
100%. Darryl, thank you again for your pioneering work, for being such a voice to this movement. I'm honored to be in this space with you, and just thank you for making the time.
Oh,
I really
my
look
pleasure.
forward to continue connecting with